The salty breeze swept across the rocky shores of Bar Harbor, Maine, carrying the sharp scent of seaweed and the distant cry of gulls. Emily Harper, barely 18, stood at the edge of the weathered dock behind her family's seafood restaurant, the Lobster Claw, her dark hair whipping in the wind as she stared out at the endless Atlantic. The ocean was her world, had been ever since she was a little girl, perched on her grandfather's knee as he spun tales of shipwrecks, mermaids, and the secrets hidden beneath the waves. Old Tom Harper, with his grizzled beard and sun-creased eyes, had been a fisherman his whole life, just like his father before him. He'd taught Emily to read the tides, to respect the sea's moods, and to dream of its mysteries. "The ocean's alive, Em," he'd say, pointing to the horizon. "It's got stories older than time, and it's up to folks like us to listen." Now, with Grandpa Tom gone 2 years, Emily felt the weight of those stories pressing on her heart, urging her toward a dream her family couldn't understand. At 18, Emily wasn't like the other kids in Bar Harbor. While her classmates at Mount Desert Island High School planned for college or dreamed of escaping to Boston or New York, Emily's heart was set on studying marine biology. She wanted to dive into the ocean's depths to understand the coral reefs and the creatures that called them home, to fight for the sea that was choking on plastic and pollution. She'd spent countless nights hunched over library books or sneaking onto the family's old desktop computer to watch documentaries about ocean conservation. Her favorite was a grainy video of a scientist tagging sea turtles off the coast of Florida, her voice steady as she explained how every tag could help save a species. Emily wanted to be that scientist, to make a difference, to give the ocean a voice. But in a town where fishing and tourism were lifeblood, her dream felt like a betrayal of everything her family stood for. The Lobster Claw was more than a restaurant. It was the Harper legacy. Emily's father, Jack, ran it with a fierce pride, his hands calloused from years of hauling lobster traps before he took over the business from Grandpa Tom. Her mother, Linda, kept the books and charmed the tourists with her warm smile and quick wit. They expected Emily to step up to learn the recipes for clam chowder and lobster rolls, to eventually take the reins. "This place is our future, Em," her dad would say, wiping sweat from his brow after a long day. "It's honest work, keeps us grounded." But Emily didn't want to be grounded. She wanted to soar, or rather to dive. The idea of spending her life serving tourists while the ocean suffered made her stomach twist. She'd seen the trash washing up on the beaches, plastic bottles, tangled fishing nets, even a rusted soda can wedged in the rocks. She'd read about the coral bleaching off the Gulf of Maine, how the warming waters were killing the ecosystems her grandfather had loved. She couldn't just stand by. School was her escape, a place where her mind could roam free. Her biology teacher, Mrs. Thompson, a wiry woman with a passion for ecology, had noticed Emily's spark early on. "You've got a scientist's mind, Emily," she'd said after Emily aced a project on phytoplankton. "Don't let anyone dim that light." Mrs. Thompson had given her a worn copy of Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us, and Emily devoured it, underlining passages about the ocean's fragility and resilience. It was Mrs. Thompson who told her about the Maine Young Scientists Competition, a statewide contest for high school students to present research projects. The grand prize was a $5,000 scholarship, enough to cover a chunk of college tuition. Emily saw it as her ticket out, not just from Bar Harbor, but from the life her parents had planned for her. She didn't tell them when she signed up. She couldn't bear the look in her dad's eyes, the one that said she was abandoning them. For weeks, Emily worked in secret, stealing hours after school, in the library, or late at night in her attic bedroom, the walls plastered with sketches of coral reefs and tide charts. Her project was ambitious, a plan to repurpose plastic waste from the harbor into floating barriers that could trap debris before it reached the open ocean. She'd gotten the idea after finding a dead seabird on the beach, its stomach sliced open by a fisherman's knife to reveal a tangle of plastic inside. The image haunted her, fueling her determination. She spent hours collecting samples from the shore bottle caps, straws, fishing lines, sorting them in the shed behind the restaurant where her dad wouldn't notice. She taught herself to write a research proposal, piecing together ideas from online articles and a battered chemistry textbook. When she presented her project to Mrs. Thompson, the teacher's eyes lit up. "This could win, Emily," she said. "It's practical, innovative, and it matters. You're ready." The day of the competition arrived a crisp Saturday in April, with the town buzzing as tourists flooded in for the spring season. Emily told her parents she was helping a friend with a school project, a half-truth that left a bitter taste in her mouth. She borrowed her mom's old bicycle and pedaled to the community center in Ellsworth, 30 miles away, her project materials stuffed in a backpack. The room was packed with students from across Maine, their posters and models lined up like battle stations. Emily felt out of place in her faded jeans and hand-me-down sweater, surrounded by kids in crisp blazers and polished shoes. Her poster, hand-drawn with colored pencils, looked childish next to the glossy displays from private schools in Portland. But when she started speaking, explaining how her barriers could be made from recycled plastic and deployed by local fishermen, the judges leaned forward, their pens scribbling. She talked about the seabird, the coral, the ocean's cry for help. Her voice shook at first, but it grew steady, fueled by passion. When the head judge, a professor from the University of Maine, asked how she'd scale the project, Emily didn't hesitate. "Start small," she said. "Test it in Bar Harbor, then share the blueprint with other coastal towns. The ocean doesn't care about borders." When they announced her name as the winner, Emily's heart stopped. The crowd clapped, and Mrs. Thompson hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. The $5,000 scholarship was hers, along with an invitation to present her project at a state environmental conference. For the first time, Emily felt like her dream was within reach. But the victory was short-lived. When she got home, her dad was waiting in the kitchen, his arms crossed, a crumpled flyer from the competition in his hand. One of the neighbors, a regular at the Lobster Claw, had seen Emily in Ellsworth and mentioned it to her mom. "What's this?" Jack asked, his voice low but sharp. "You're sneaking around, entering contests, planning to leave us. You think you're too good for this place." Emily tried to explain her words, tumbling out about the scholarship, the ocean, her need to do something bigger. But her dad's face hardened. "We've got a business to run," he said. "Your mom and I are counting on you. College is a pipe dream, especially for a girl who should be learning the ropes here. You're not some fancy scientist, Emily. You're a Harper." The words stung, cutting deeper than she'd expected. Her mom stood silently by the stove, stirring a pot of chowder, her eyes avoiding Emily's. That night, Emily lay awake, the scholarship letter hidden under her pillow, her grandfather's old compass on her nightstand. She could still hear his voice. "Listen to the sea. It'll tell you where to go." The next morning, Emily found Mrs. Thompson waiting for her outside the school. The teacher's face was grim but determined. "I heard about your dad," she said, "but I'm not letting you give up. There's a full-ride scholarship at the University of Maine for students like you, first-generation low-income with a passion for science. I've already submitted your name and your project. The deadline's in a month, and I'll help you with the application." Emily's throat tightened. A full ride would change everything, no more worrying about tuition, no more guilt about leaving her parents in the lurch. But it also meant defying them, maybe losing them. She thought of the ocean, the way it churned and fought, but always found a way to keep moving. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. Mrs. Thompson put a hand on her shoulder. "You already are, Emily. You just have to take the next step." Weeks passed in a blur. Emily threw herself into the scholarship application, writing essays about her love for the ocean and her vision for its future. She worked late into the night, her desk littered with coffee mugs and notes on marine ecosystems. She avoided her dad's questions, dodging his lectures about duty and family. Her mom started leaving college brochures on the kitchen table, a silent gesture of support. But Jack's disapproval hung over the house like a storm cloud. The day the scholarship decision arrived, Emily's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Accepted. Full tuition room and board at the University of Maine starting in the fall. She clutched the letter, tears blurring the words, knowing this was her chance to become the scientist she'd always dreamed of. But as she looked out at the harbor, the boats bobbing under the gray sky, she felt the weight of her choice. Her parents were in the restaurant serving the lunch crowd, their lives tied to this place. Could she leave them behind? Could she follow the sea's call? Even if it meant breaking their hearts. Emily Harper stepped onto the University of Maine's campus in Orono with a mix of awe and dread, her old duffel bag slung over one shoulder and the weight of her family's expectations pressing on the other. The September air was crisp, tinged with the scent of pine and the faint hum of excitement from freshmen moving into dorms. At 19, Emily was one of them, the first Harper to set foot in a college lecture hall, her full-ride scholarship to study marine biology, a hard-won ticket out of Bar Harbor. But the victory felt fragile. Her father's words still echoed, "You're a Harper, not some scientist." Her mother had hugged her tightly at the bus station, whispering, "Make us proud." But Jack's silence had been louder. Now standing under the towering oaks of the campus quad, Emily felt like a fish out of water. Her faded jeans and scuffed sneakers stark against the polished confidence of her peers. She clutched her grandfather's old compass tucked in her pocket and took a deep breath. The ocean was still out there, waiting for her to fight for it. Her first weeks were a whirlwind of lectures, labs, and late-night study sessions in the library where the fluorescent lights buzzed and the smell of old books mingled with coffee. Marine biology was everything she'd dreamed, classes on ocean currents, coral ecosystems, and the chemistry of seawater felt like unlocking the sea's secrets. But the academic world was ruthless. Her classmates, many from wealthier towns like Portland or private schools, tossed around terms like peer-reviewed and hypothesis testing with ease, while Emily scrambled to keep up. In her Intro to Ecology class, a group project paired her with Ethan Caldwell, a lanky sophomore with a smirk and a habit of interrupting her ideas. "You're from where Bar Harbor," he'd said, eyeing her worn notebook. "Guess you know lobster traps, not lab protocols." The words stung, but Emily bit her tongue, remembering Mrs. Thompson's advice, "Prove them wrong with your work, not your words." The real challenge came in her marine ecosystems lab, taught by Dr. Margaret Pierce, a stern professor with a reputation for weeding out weak students. Emily admired her. Dr. Pierce had published papers on coral bleaching in the Gulf of Maine, the very issue Emily wanted to tackle. But admiration didn't make the class easier. During a lab on water sampling, Emily fumbled with a pipette, spilling seawater across the bench. Ethan snickered, and Dr. Pierce's sharp gaze pinned her. "Precision matters, Miss Harper," she said. "The ocean doesn't forgive mistakes." Emily's cheeks burned, but she nodded, determined to do better. She stayed late in the lab practicing techniques until her hands ached, driven by the memory of that dead seabird on the beach, its stomach full of plastic. She wasn't here to fail. Her chance to shine came when Dr. Pierce announced a field research opportunity at the Bay of Fundy, a marine hotspot known for its dramatic tides and rich biodiversity. The project aimed to assess pollution levels in a coral reef system off the Maine New Brunswick border, and only 5 students would be chosen. Emily threw herself into the application, spending nights drafting a proposal to study microplastic accumulation in the reef. She pored over journal articles, her desk a mess of highlighters and sticky notes, until her roommate, a cheerful engineering major named Sarah, begged her to sleep. "You're gonna burn out, Em," Sarah said, tossing her a granola bar, but Emily couldn't stop. This was her shot to prove she belonged not just to Dr. Pierce, but to herself. When her name appeared on the accepted list, Emily's heart soared. She called her mom, who whooped over the phone, but her dad only grunted, "Hope it's worth it." The sting of his doubt lingered as Emily boarded a university van with the research team, a mix of grad students and undergrads, including Ethan, who rolled his eyes when she climbed in. The Bay of Fundy was a 3-hour drive, and the team set up camp on a rocky shore, the water a churning gray under a cloudy sky. Emily's job was to collect sediment samples from the reef, diving in a wetsuit that felt like a second skin. The first dive was exhilarating. Schools of fish darted through the murky water, and the coral, though patchy and pale, was alive with color. But as she sifted through the sediment, she found tiny plastic beads, fishing line fragments, and bottle caps embedded in the reef. Her stomach twisted. This was her grandfather's ocean, and it was suffocating. Back at camp, Emily presented her findings to the team, her voice steady as she explained the microplastic threat. "These particles are ingested by marine life, disrupting the food chain," she said, pointing to her samples. "We need to trace the source and propose mitigation." Ethan scoffed. "You think you're going to save the ocean with a few test tubes? This is small potatoes." Dr. Pierce raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, scribbling in her notebook. Emily's confidence wavered, but she pressed on, sketching a plan for a community-based cleanup and stricter fishing regulations. That night, she overheard Ethan telling another student, "She's got no business here. Probably just got in because of some diversity quota." The words hit like a punch, and Emily retreated to her tent, her grandfather's compass cold in her hand. Was she fooling herself? Did she really belong here? The next day, a storm rolled in, grounding the team's dives. Emily used the time to analyze her samples, cross-referencing them with pollution data from the Gulf of Maine. She discovered a pattern: the microplastics matched waste from a nearby industrial plant, a fish processing facility that supplied Bar Harbor's restaurants, including her family's. The realization hit hard. Her parents' livelihood, her town's economy was tied to the very pollution she wanted to stop. She confided in Jake, a quiet grad student who'd been kind to her, always offering a spare pencil or a nod of encouragement. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice breaking. "If I push this, I'm betraying my family. If I don't, I'm betraying the ocean." Jake leaned back, his glasses fogging in the damp air. "Sometimes doing what's right means pissing people off," he said. "But you've got the data. Use it." Emily poured her energy into a revised proposal outlining a filtration system for the plant's runoff and a community recycling initiative to reduce plastic waste. She presented it to Dr. Pierce, expecting skepticism, but the professor's eyes softened. "This is ambitious, Emily," she said, "but it's untested. You're asking a small town to change its ways based on one undergrad's data. Convince me you can make it happen." Emily spent the next week refining her plan, collaborating with Jake to model the filtration system's impact. She reached out to Mrs. Thompson, who connected her with a local environmental group, Coastal Guardians, willing to pilot her idea. The group's director, a gruff woman named Carla, was impressed. "You're from Bar Harbor?" she asked over a crackly phone call. "We need kids like you," Come talk to us when you're back." Just as Emily felt she was gaining ground, a call from her mom shattered her focus. "Your dad's sick," Linda said, her voice tight. "Heart trouble. The doctor says it's stress, maybe more. The restaurant's struggling tourist season's been slow. We need you, Em." Emily's chest tightened. The lobster claw was drowning in debt, and her dad's health was failing. Her scholarship covered her expenses, but she'd been sending half her work-study paycheck home to help with bills. Now her parents wanted her to take a semester off, to come back and run the front of house while her dad recovered. "Your family," her mom said. "That's what matters." Emily hung up, staring at her research notes, the ocean's pull warring with her guilt. She thought of her grandfather, his stories of sailors braving storms of the sea, demanding courage. But what kind of courage did it take to choose between her family and her dream? The field project wrapped, and Emily returned to campus, her proposal earning a nod from Dr. Pierce. "It's got potential," she said. "Keep pushing." Coastal Guardians offered to fund a small-scale test of her filtration system, a chance to make a real impact. But as Emily sat in her dorm, the scholarship letter on her desk, and her dad's hospital bills in an email, she felt the waves closing in. She could stay, fight for the ocean, and risk losing her family's trust. Or she could go home, save the restaurant, and bury her dream. The compass in her pocket felt heavier than ever, its needle pointing north toward the seas, toward the unknown. Emily Harper stood on the rocky shore of Bar Harbor, the November wind biting through her jacket, as she stared at the gray expanse of the Atlantic. The ocean churned its waves, crashing against the jagged rocks, a reminder of the fight she'd taken on. At 19, she was back in her hometown for the first time since starting at the University of Maine. Her heart torn between her family's struggling restaurant and her dream of saving the sea. Her marine biology scholarship was a lifeline, but her father's heart condition and the mounting debts of the lobster claw weighed heavily. Her research project, a plan to combat microplastic pollution in the Gulf of Maine's coral reefs, had caught the attention of Coastal Guardians, a local environmental group who offered to fund a pilot program. But Emily's discovery that a nearby fish processing plant, a key supplier for her family's restaurant, was a major polluter complicated everything. She was at a crossroads: expose the plant and risk her town's economy, including her parents' livelihood, or stay silent and betray the ocean she'd sworn to protect. Back on campus, Emily's days were a blur of lectures, lab work, and late-night calls with Coastal Guardians. Her proposal for a filtration system to capture microplastics from the plant's runoff was gaining traction, but implementing it meant confronting Bar Harbor's tight-knit community, where the plant employed dozens of locals. Her classmate Jake, now a close friend, helped her refine the data, his calm logic balancing her passion. "You're not just fighting for the ocean, Em," he said one night over coffee in the library. "You're fighting for your home. That's harder." Emily nodded, her grandfather's compass in her pocket, a constant reminder of his words. The sea's worth fighting for, but so's family. She knew she had to find a way to save both. The turning point came when Emily returned home for Thanksgiving, her first visit since her dad's diagnosis. The lobster claw was quieter than she remembered, the usual tourist buzz replaced by empty tables and a tired air. Her mom, Linda, greeted her with a weary hug, her eyes shadowed with worry. Jack, still recovering from a minor heart attack, sat in the back office, his face drawn as he pored over bills. "We're barely hanging on, Em," he said, his voice gruff but softer than before. "I know you've got your studies, but this place is your legacy." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him about her project about the plant's pollution, but the words stuck. Instead, she helped in the kitchen, chopping onions for chowder and serving the few customers who trickled in. That night, she overheard her parents talking in hushed tones about selling the restaurant if things didn't turn around. The thought of losing the lobster claw, her grandfather's pride, felt like losing a piece of her soul. The next day, Emily walked the beach, collecting plastic debris as she wrestled with her next move. She found a child's toy boat tangled in seaweed, its bright colors faded by the sea, and it hit her. The ocean wasn't just her dream, it was Bar Harbor's lifeblood. If the reefs died, the fish would vanish, and so would the town's future. She had to act, but not alone. She called Carla, the director of Coastal Guardians, and proposed a community meeting to present her findings. "You're asking people to turn against their own," Carla warned. "It won't be easy." Emily knew she was right, but she also knew silence wasn't an option. She spent the week gathering data on the plant's runoff, chemical analyses, showing high levels of microplastics in the harbor, photos of damaged coral, and projections of economic losses if the ecosystem collapsed. Jake drove up from Orono to help, bringing charts and a prototype of the filtration system they'd designed together. The meeting was held at the town hall, a squat brick building packed with fishermen, shop owners, and plant workers. Emily stood at the front, her hands trembling as she set up her laptop. Her parents were in the crowd, her dad's arms crossed, her mom's face unreadable. "I know this town depends on the plant," Emily began, her voice shaky but clear. "But it's poisoning our ocean. Microplastics are killing the reefs, the fish, the very thing that keeps Bar Harbor alive." She clicked through slides showing images of polluted sediment and dying coral. Her data painting a stark picture. Murmurs rippled through the room, some skeptical, others angry. A plant worker, a burly man named Tom, who'd known her since she was a kid, stood up. "You're saying my job's the problem. What's next? Shutting us down?" Emily took a deep breath, remembering Jake's advice to stay calm. "Not shutting down," she said. "Cleaning up. My filtration system can catch the plastics before they reach the water. It's affordable, and the plant can keep running. But we have to act now." Her dad stood next, his voice low but carrying. "Emily, you're pointing fingers at the people who put food on our table. You think you know better than us?" The room went quiet, and Emily felt every eye on her. She thought of her grandfather, of the sea bird of the ocean's cry. "Dad," she said, "meeting his gaze, I learned to love the sea from you and Grandpa. You taught me to fight for what matters. The plant's not the enemy, it's the waste. If we don't fix this, there won't be a harbor to fish or a restaurant to run." Jack's jaw tightened, but he sat down, his silence louder than any argument. The meeting ended with mixed reactions. Some supported her, others scoffed, but Carla and Coastal Guardians pledged to fund a pilot of the filtration system. Emily spent the next weeks working with the group, coordinating with the plant's management to install the prototype. It wasn't easy. The plant's owner, a gruff businessman named Mr. Callahan, resisted at first, citing costs, but Emily's data and the growing community support swayed him. She organized beach cleanups, rallying local kids and fishermen to collect plastic waste, turning the effort into a town event. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Her mom started joining the cleanups, quietly proud. And even Jack showed up one day, hauling a net full of debris without a word. But the biggest revelation came one evening when Jack called Emily to the restaurant's back porch, the same spot where she'd listened to her grandfather's stories. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice rough. "When I was your age, I wanted to be a marine biologist too. Applied to college, got in, but my dad, your grandpa, needed me here. I gave it up, and I've been angry ever since. Didn't want you to go through that, to chase a dream and get hurt." Emily stared at him, stunned. All this time his resistance wasn't about her, it was about his own regrets. "Dad," she said, "I'm not giving up. But I'm not leaving you behind either. This project, it's for the ocean, but it's for Bar Harbor too." Jack's eyes glistened, and he pulled her into a hug, the first in months. "You're stubborn as hell, Em," he said. "Just like me." The pilot program launched in December with the filtration system installed at the plant's outflow. Early tests showed a 70% reduction in microplastics, and Coastal Guardians secured a grant from a National Environmental Foundation to expand the project. Emily's work earned her an invitation to present at a marine conservation conference in Boston, a chance to share her findings with scientists from across the country. She stood on the stage, her grandfather's compass in her pocket, and spoke about the power of small towns to make big changes. "Bar Harbor taught me that the ocean isn't just out there," she said, her voice steady. "It's in our blood. We protect it, or we lose ourselves." The crowd applauded, and Emily felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for her town. Back home. The Lobster Claw was still struggling, but the cleanups had brought in new customers drawn by the town's environmental push. Jack started displaying Emily's research posters in the restaurant, a quiet gesture of support. Linda began talking about adding ocean-friendly dishes to the menu sourced from sustainable fisheries. Emily, now splitting her time between campus and home, trained local volunteers to monitor the filtration system, ensuring its success. She also started a science club at her old high school, mentoring girls who dreamed of careers in STEM, telling them about the seabird, the coral, and the power of one voice to change the tide. As winter settled over Bar Harbor, Emily stood on the dock, the ocean calmer now, its surface reflecting the pale sun. She'd faced her fears, her dad's doubts, her town's resistance, her own insecurities, and come out stronger. The compass in her hand pointed north, toward the sea, toward a future where she could be both a scientist and a daughter. The ocean had tested her, but it had also shown her the way. She wasn't just fighting for the reefs or the fish. She was fighting for the people she loved, for the home she'd never leave behind. And in that fight, she'd found her place beneath the waves in the light of the ocean. Lesson learned. Emily's journey teaches that perseverance and courage can overcome societal biases and personal doubts. It emphasizes the importance of pursuing one's passion, especially for young women in STEM, while highlighting the collective responsibility to protect the environment. By bridging her love for the ocean with her loyalty to her family, Emily shows that true success comes from collaboration, empathy, and a commitment to doing what's right, even when it's hard.